Mr. Pete Nigerian joining us on the line as well from Market Rebellion. Let me bring him in here as we are cooking stocks. Just a lot of green on this market today. Pete, right? Not bad, eh?
Not so bad, Oliver. I tell you what, I'm loving it because I tend to lean a little bit long, especially under circumstances where I don't really fully comprehend why it's being sold off so much sometimes. So it's been already an interesting week, and we're only 3 days into it, but it certainly has been a wild ride, whether or not you want to look at the S&P 500, and everybody was woe is me, and everything was awful, right, on Monday. I mean, it's a terrible thing, you know, Trump did this, Trump did that, whatever. And I don't ever go political, but it's just interesting to see the reactions, Oliver, that we were getting on Monday because of the fact that, okay, well, they're taking down these tariffs. And he said, well, how about 10%? And you know what? Then he came up 15% on Saturday. And, you know, Monday was what it was. We sold off. But here's the interesting thing. You take a look over at the S&P 500 today, from where it was on Monday, and you're up almost over 100 points. So pretty nice move that we're seeing, and you know that's kind of why I tend to still lean a little bit long, because obviously I like what we've seen through earnings. I like what we've seen through some of the other areas of the marketplace that probably don't get talked enough about, but also, and you and I talk about this almost every week, but the Burl Ives trade, it is alive and strong and continuing, and the buying that continues to roll in there, absolutely incredible, whether it's SLV or GLD. It has been unbelievable so far, Oliver. I swear to you, and I know you probably get tired of this whole thing about me talking about silver and gold.
Hey, it is where it is. The trade hasn't stopped. SLV at 82. Where are you seeing the buying action, Pete? How much speculation, how much conviction is there in what you're seeing for options flow?
Huge conviction. You know, if you go look back last Friday and take a look at where things were, $75, give or take, is where we were. And we had some huge buying there. 17,000 of the 74 calls were getting bought. Then you come back to Monday, 19,000 of the February 80 calls getting bought. I mean, it's something that just continues to hit day after day after day. And we have seen some monstrous trades in there. We have 20,000 calls getting bought just last week as well. Those are already expired. But the movements that we are seeing in silver, and particularly, obviously, with the SLV being a great way to try to do that whole thing, that options have been absolutely incredible, and they keep coming for it. You'd think that maybe they'd say, okay, we're going to back off a little bit. We're not seeing that at all. And
I thought maybe, too, the chart to me was looking a little bit dicey here a couple weeks back, Pete, when it was fighting to hold $65 on SLV. My point was GLD looks like the better version, which I think was correct, but now they look the same, basically. Silver's, you know, now making a higher high. So that chart is looking pretty darn good.
Yeah, the chart looks great. And you mentioned gold. How about GLD, just the movement that we've had out of there? We get hits almost every day, it feels like. As a matter of fact, in just the last couple of days, and more of it today, we had 56,000 of the March 495 calls being bought. That's a pretty nice number. 55,000 of the March 485s were getting bought just the other day. And then 55,000 of the March 505 calls were getting bought just the other day. So we're seeing buyers, we're seeing some, they're mostly spreads still, just to keep some clarity there. We're seeing spreads. They're buying, obviously, and they're going out either 15 bucks higher, 20 bucks higher. That's usually what they're doing. Once in a while, it's only $10. But these spreads, Oliver, just are absolutely extraordinary to see day after day after day. And it just seems like GLD is just, it's almost like, where is it? You know, when we get to 2 o'clock and we haven't seen a GLD trade, it's kind of
like, what's going on?
I go looking around to try to find where it is. But I think that the reality is, you know, today was a great example of that. Just about, 30 minutes ago is when we started to see the 56,000 of these March 495 calls being bought. So it finally hit. It took till, you know, basically the final hour of trade, but they're out there and they're continuing to buy that side of the world. And you know what? It's a place that people feel they can hide a little bit anyway. And so far, so good. It's been a pretty nice ride. Even on days like today where it's going up as strong as it is as far as the other broad part of the market. And, you know, you start seeing some of the names that are moving. And yet gold continues to go higher. And like you said, silver is doing a pretty good job as well.
Yeah, both of them looking good. Bitcoin in it as well. It's just a very encouraging day for risk on and risk appetite overall. So kind of everywhere you look. A few places that I think are overlooked that you've been looking at as well, Pete, you mentioned. Let's go to a few specific names here that you're watching. Coreweave is one. CRWV, stock that's been range bound but was a real hot trade middle to early last year. And then, kind of fizzled, made some lower highs, made lower lows. What do you see here? What stands out?
Well, what stands out for me is they just keep coming for Coreweave. Just this week, as a matter of fact, it's been pretty amazing. On Monday, they were buying the March 115 calls, $4. They bought 22,000 of those, Oliver. I mean, some of the size of some of these trades is just extraordinary to see. Just how much the investment that is going into these. The April 130 calls, they paid a little over $5.50, I think, for these. 23,000 of those were bought, and these were just getting traded just yesterday. So, yeah, there's not somebody out there saying they're tired of it. They're still seeing that Coreweave has some potential to the upside, but by the buying that we're seeing, I own a little bit of this because I was so convinced by this unusual option activity, as we call it, moving. It's amazing. They've got their Gen AI, they've got all these things, the cloud platform and so forth, and Coreweave seems to be a name that people are pretty attracted to, at least for now. We're seeing that now, and they're going to March and April. They're not going out too far, but they are going all the way out to April.
I do see the IV picking up, to your point, going into earnings, right, which are coming out tomorrow. So maybe there's, event possibility here as well. So speaking of that, we got the big dog.
There's the event.
Yeah, Nvidia. I mean, I kind of love, there's some here in this chart, Pete, that is making the bull in me, breathe it out, snort it out. It feels like we might be getting ready to charge because Nvidia's breaking out of this range. It hasn't been above 195 in a while. Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned the S&P 500 too, which is, I had this yellow line at 6,900. And that was the straight midpoint, right? Between 7 and 68, basically. And we kind of gapped above that after a 7-day range as well. So it's kind of almost like getting a little gappy to the upside today in some of these really important names. So tell me what you see in NVIDIA.
Well, the interesting thing is not as much today, but on Monday, we did see towards the end of the trading session, there was a huge buyer, 25,000 of the March 205 calls. Well, those calls have really ripped already based upon the movement that we have seen. And amazing to see that happened. During Monday, stock was only trading about 191 at the time, and they bought 25,000 of these 205s for about 460. Those have jumped up pretty nicely. I think they've doubled so far since that buy, and it's been an incredible move. I still think that the potential is out there, and all of it comes down to this. The numbers themselves are extremely important. I guess the next thing would be, what is the CapEx? Because that is the latest, greatest thing, right? I mean, if your CapEx is really high, that's not been very good in terms of the interpretation from a lot of the folks out there. And so that's something we'll be watching very closely. But I would say that Judson Wong does a great job of controlling the narrative as best as he can. And so we'll see if he's able to do that today as well. It'll be really interesting after the close to see what they have to say, but also some of the questions that he will be answering. He's always been very upfront and a guy who's been very solid about what he's proposed to folks and what to be looking for within his stock. So I'm just looking at it this way. If the numbers are as good as I think that they will be, it makes a lot of sense that this move that they're making right now and this potential of a breakout, it really could be a real potential of a breakout, even much higher. But that being said, we know that over the last couple of weeks, as we've gotten some of these tech names, that CapEx has really been something that pulls these things down pretty quick.
Absolutely. But it could be, it pulls down the hyperscalers, but it might eventually pull up Nvidia. As they're spending on, they're spending on their hardware. Here's some of the numbers from ChatGPT. Speaking of which, powering it all, 70 to 73% annualized earnings growth for Nvidia 66% and a half roughly for the year-over-year revenue growth. So their earnings are growing at a faster rate year over year now than the revenue, which is a great story about margins. It's just, even if they miss, it's like they're still doing insane numbers. I remember we had this conversation like 2 years ago, you know, and it was like when they were doing the 200, 300% stuff. And the fact that now we've moved on and they have fallen to 60 to 70% growth is like, how could people be, I just don't understand how you could want to try and fade the broad market or be bearish really anything when this is, you know, the engine. This is really the engine. And there's a lot of different parts to our machine, but this is how it started. It started with Nvidia, and it is still cranking. The machine is still powerful.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you know what? When they actually deliver, and it's not that far away now, we're getting closer to 2:30. So, you know, after the close, it's going to be really interesting to see. Again, I think it does come down to the narrative. It comes down to I think the numbers themselves are going to look really good. I really do. Which is why I'm leaning in that direction. It's why I own some calls in there, because A, we're seeing those calls being bought. B, it seems like the right time because the stock has not really been all that much movement, as you and I were talking about earlier. Been pinned down there somewhere in the 190s, the low 190s for a while, and now it's starting to break a little bit. And now will it be able to break even better? And we've seen that in the past, but can it happen again? I think it probably can, based upon a lot of the numbers that we are seeing out there. But it's a matter of can they deliver? And I feel pretty confident that they can.
Yeah, I think they will as well. And I think that my personal bias is it seems like things are looking positive for it. Also, the flip side, though, is, you know, if any of it misses, then all right, be aware, because we've still seen the S&P 500 pinned in this range. You know, even though I think the chart looks really good here today, it still hasn't broken out. I think the volatility experts would tell you that there is still a very strong potential for the second derivative type gamma squeeze in either direction. If this range we've been in has to break and, you know, peels off, then all right. You know, I do think, though, that the bias for me would be that it looks like it's going to break to the upside. But still, it is a big piece of the puzzle. It needs to fall into place, and it's looking pretty good right now. Pete, thank you very much, as always, sir. Much appreciated for your time. Great thoughts.
You're the best, man. Thanks. See ya.
Back at you.